Hello, this is Hussein Asghari speaking to you from the Belt and Road Institute in Sweden. Today we're going to discuss a very special issue because President of the United States, Donald Trump, has made a number of very shocking statements concerning the situation in Gaza. That he wants to take over the Gaza Strip and deport its population, its Palestinian population, who have suffered under a genocidal war, deport them to some other countries, and at the same time rebuild the Gaza Strip to make tourist resorts, gambling casinos, and things of the like. Not only this is not a realistic suggestion, but if it's done, it would be considered a war crime, according to the United Nations Charter. It's also important to note here, to be fair, that the Trump administration has pushed for the ceasefire in Gaza, and forcing in a certain way, the Israelis to accept the ceasefire and get the hostage and prisoner exchange going, but also allowing humanitarian aid to go into Gaza. So this is a very important as a first step into establishing a more peaceful situation, which could lead to positive outcomes. Now, also, the Arab countries are very much engaged in this process, and Egypt has actually a plan for the reconstruction of Gaza, which it will be presented during the Arab Summit on March the 7th. But President Trump's statements are encouraging the extreme Zionists in the Netanyahu administration to pursue the war again, and push out the Palestinian people, not only from Gaza but also the West Bank, which has been a very old goal by these Zionists. So this is not very helpful. Actually, it was quite possible to have a ceasefire and peace negotiations already last summer, when Beijing, the Chinese Foreign Ministry, managed to get all the 14 Palestinian factions to sign the Beijing Declaration. One of the most important parts of that declaration was that Hamas accepted to concede control and administration of the Gaza Strip to the Palestinian Liberation Organization, the PLO, and that the PLO will be the only legitimate representative of the people in Gaza, but also, of course, in the West Bank, although Hamas had won elections before, but Hamas had accepted to concede that. So this opened a window for the Biden administration to launch the ceasefire and peace talks to end the war, but it not only dodged that chance, but also continued to supply the Netanyahu government with weapons, and the situation escalated. Remember, immediately after the Beijing Declaration was announced in last July, the Israelis assassinated the head of Hamas in the Iranian capital, Ismail Haniyeh. He was supposed to be the person to negotiate the details of so the person who was involved in this was assassinated by the Israelis, and then the escalation with Iran started, and so on and so forth. So the Biden administration sabotaged that process, and now the chance is there to go back to that. And of course, the Israelis and the Americans have as a condition that Hamas does not exercise control in Gaza, and the Arab countries also in favor of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and the Palestinian administration to have the administrative control in Gaza. So this is the situation. But at the same time, his national security advisor came out and in defense of Trump, and he said, what makes us suggest that this whole thing is a provocation to get reactions. His national security advisor said, well, President Trump made his proposal. If somebody else has better ideas, let them come forward. And therefore, my friends in the Schiller Institute, International Schiller Institute, and I have been working with them on a plan which is called the Oasis plan for many, many years. It was first proposed a long time ago by the late American economist and thinker Lyndon LaRouche for peace through economic development in West Asia, the so-called Middle East. My colleagues in the Schiller Institute and I have been working to redefine the Oasis plan to fit it into the picture of how to rebuild Gaza. I will show a video of my friend Jason Ross from the Schiller Institute, who will explain the Oasis plan in general, and then I will explain it in the context of the larger picture of the Belt and Road Initiative and the global perspective. I will also use the example of the development which took place in Xinjiang, the Uyghur Autonomous Region of China, because there are many similarities between Xinjiang and the whole west of Asia. So let's first see the details of the Oasis plan.
A strong economic and reconstruction and development plan is needed for a viable Palestinian state in particular. Lyndon LaRouche laid it out 30 years ago. It is called the Oasis Plan. Immediately after the 1993 signing of the Oslo Accord in the White House by Israeli and Palestinian leaders, Lyndon LaRouche and his associates urged those parties and the international community to implement economic development projects to advance the peace process. LaRouche and his associates developed the Oasis Plan, which included both certain economic aspects of Annex 4 of the 1993 Oslo Accord, which was called the Protocol on Israeli-Palestinian Cooperation Concerning Regional Development Programs. Plus, it called for additional crucial water, power, and other projects that LaRouche noted were needed in the mid-1970s. This plan, the Oasis Plan, focused primarily on addressing the greatest barrier to development in the region, the shortage of fresh water, through the construction of a network of desalination plants that could turn the plentiful seawater into fresh water. And these plants would not only be on the Mediterranean coast, they would be built along two new canals, one connecting the Red Sea with the Dead Sea, and another connecting it to the Mediterranean. To be clear, these new canals or aqueducts are not for cargo shipping, as an alternative to the Suez Canal. Their purpose is to transport water. Now, because of the low elevation of the Dead Sea, which is more than 400 meters below sea level, the flowing water could also provide hydropower, electricity along the way, which could help power the desalination plants and development more generally. The plants could also be powered by the large quantities of natural gas off the shores of Gaza, Israel, Lebanon, Syria, and Egypt. But most importantly, the Oasis Plan calls for going beyond hydropower and chemical fuels altogether, through the construction of nuclear power complexes along these canals and on the shores of the Mediterranean and the Red Sea, to produce plentiful electricity and to desalinate seawater to green the vast deserts of the region and to power an industrialization process in Palestine, in Israel, Jordan, Syria, Lebanon, and Egypt. The use of nuclear power for energy would liberate the region's hydrocarbon resources to be used chemically to produce industrial materials through intermediate petrochemical products. The nuclear-powered complexes could use inherently safe, pebble-bed, high-temperature gas-cooled reactors of the type just brought into operation in Shidao Bay, China. The new man-made rivers created by desalination will tremendously expand the potential for agricultural and industrial development across the region, making the deserts and the economies bloom. LaRouche explained the necessity of developing new sources of water in a 1994 speech. LaRouche: one cannot meet the indices of water consumption for a modern population, for both the Palestinian and Israeli populations, under present conditions. There is a conflict over water because the Israelis have, frankly, been using their conquests to take water from everybody. It's one of the conflicts with Syria on the Golan Heights issue. It involves in Lebanon the Litani River and things of that sort. So the Power and water development have to be accompanied by a network of transportation infrastructure, upgrading the physical connectivity between all the nations of the region, turning a region of conflict, a barrier to connectivity, into a hub of interaction, into a crossroads. A highway connecting the West Bank with the Gaza Strip, linking the Palestinian state, is an absolutely essential feature of this network. Regional highways and rail networks will allow the entire area to operate from a higher economic platform. LaRouche also proposed an expansion of the Suez Canal, with industrial zones to be built on both sides, a task that has been accomplished by Egypt in recent years. LaRouche argued since 1975 that this region, which is the crossroads of civilization and located geographically between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, and between Europe, Asia, and Africa, that it has a unique position as an industrial and logistics hub. Oil and natural gas will be feedstocks for industrial production of plastics, paints, many other useful materials, rather than being exported as a raw material to be used primarily for simple combustion. The upgrading of connectivity to enable higher levels of development has been a key feature of the 2013 China-proposed Belt and Road Initiative. Using this region as a land bridge between continents, with the major powers like the US, China, Russia, and the EU contributing to its development, will stabilize the area and, along the way, help cement the better relations among the superpowers that will have been necessary to bring it into being. Scientific, technological, and cultural cooperation and exchanges are key elements in the transformative process the Oasis Plan represents. By cooperating to fight the desert, rather than each other, the people of the region will better be able to recognize the humanity in each other, the common capability of human beings to discover principles of nature and to transform our relationship to the environment around us. There are no human animals. So, how will we pay for all this, and who's paying? Part of the funding will come from financial aid, made more possible by beating swords into plowshares, by converting the industrial and research capabilities of the military financial complex into productive uses, as detailed in a study by Executive Intelligence Review. Apart from international aid, $100 billion of credit can be realized over a decade for the reconstruction of the Palestinian areas and the full building out of the Oasis Plan infrastructure. This can be organized through development banks associated with the BRICS Plus nations, including the Islamic Development Bank in Saudi Arabia, the New Development Bank headquartered in China, and other national development banks of the Southwest Asia region. The sovereign wealth funds of the major regional BRICS Plus nations can help capitalize these development banks for this purpose. The countries of the Gulf Cooperation Council have sovereign wealth funds holding some $4 trillion worth of capital. This has traditionally been placed in financial, banking, or real estate assets in the collapsing transatlantic sector. And now these countries are looking for more productive investments instead in Eurasia and Africa. This investment can be concessionary development loans from these banks. For example, 20 years duration, interest rates of 2%, and an initial grace period of 5 years if necessary. The debt service payments on these development loans, at least if they're made in the immediate future, would have to be made by the State of Israel, as the state currently occupying and taxing the entire area of Israel and Palestine today. The United States, and perhaps other nations, as determined at an International Peace and Development Conference, would be the guarantors of these debt service payments. The organization of this reconstruction work and the building of the Oasis Plan infrastructure could be organized under the authority of the UN Peacekeeping Mission's Military Logistics Unit and the UN Relief and Works Agency for Refugees in Palestine, and any other authorities that are required. These arrangements should all be formally agreed upon by the nations involved in the framework of an international peace conference on Israel and Palestine, which must urgently be organized. International commitments to development, both through these particular projects and as a paradigm, must be made. Achieving peace in Southwest Asia, not only between Israelis and Palestinians, but among all the countries of the entire region, will mark a new epoch in human history, as a region known for conflict transforms into one of connectivity, standing at the crossroads of 3 continents. The Oasis plan is not some distant aspiration of what can be achieved in the future after peace. It is only through a paradigm of international relations supporting this approach that peace is even possible.
If we look at the natural setting, the topography and other features of this whole region, which intersects the New Silk Road, we find out that it's dominated by an arid and desert areas. It varies from region to region, but it's generally, this is an exaggerated picture, but this is the nature of this area from the Atlantic coast in Morocco, Mauritania, all the way through the Sahara, the African Sahara, to Egypt, to West Asia, to Central Asia, and all the way to China. Getting somewhere close to Beijing is all an arid or desert area. If we look at the region as my friend Jason explained very well in this video, there are similar features to the situation in West China, in the Xinjiang province. In Xinjiang, we have the Taklamakan desert. As you can see, also you have the Gobi Desert, and it extends almost close to the capital, Beijing. But the Taklamakan Desert is the second largest desert in the world as a shifting sand desert. I will come back to this area which is marked by the arrow, which is right on the edge of this vast desert. Now, China has made enormous advances in greening the deserts. This last year, actually, China managed to build a green wall around the whole desert, extending thousands of kilometers. But this area, I will come back to this place. It's called Korla, and I will show some clips from that. But I visited Xinjiang last year in April. I stayed there for about 2 weeks. I traveled around the area, but I was much more interested in the desert control and agriculture in this area. Xinjiang is known actually as one of the largest producers of cotton, and the textile industries in Xinjiang are very well known, and they are now under pressure from the West, the United States especially, to diminish and control this important industry in Xinjiang. So I made this recording a while ago to give some sense of what is going on in that area. You from south of the city of Korla in Xinjiang, which is just a few, not so big distance to the second largest desert in the world, which is the Taklamakan Desert. But surprisingly, what you find here is that you have enormous agricultural activity in Xinjiang. And it's very interesting that the use of new technologies, machines, robots is revolutionizing the agricultural process, using drones, using modern sensors of the soil temperature, soil humidity. As you can see, this is a vast desert. This is the area called Yuli, and that's the edge of the desert. That's where the desert starts. But you can see there's already infrastructure there, which is crucial. You have the electricity, the transport lines, both roads and railways, but also you have water transport systems. You see on the side of the road there are these pipelines extended, and then the desert itself is being reclaimed, it's being leveled, water management systems are brought there, and the state-of-the-art technologies for preparing the land. And also, of course, you have these technology to save water. For example, you see here, they are covering the soil with plastic sheets. to prevent evaporation and protect the plants, the cotton plants or other plants. And then they use drip irrigation, which is the most effective method of irrigation in the whole, in these dry areas. It saves water to up to 80% usually. So this is a massive development, and the lessons that could be learned from this are very, very crucial for the situation in West Asia and the Palestinian areas. Of course, Israel, they have very developed agricultural techniques also. They use it in the Negev desert and so on. But the Chinese have a much larger industrial capacity and ability to transfer this technology to other parts. So you see, this was a complete desert, and now it's being turned into something. You remember the area I showed you on the map with the arrow on it? This is the city of Korla, and this was like, it's in the same area. And look what they have managed to do in a few years in this city, turning it into a top modern city. There's even a lake in the middle of the city. And you see it's very, very advanced infrastructure, but also a very, very beautiful city, very green city. Planted trees, gardens, parks everywhere. So this was one of the most shocking features I've seen in China, actually. I thought, I knew there was development in China, but coming to this city on the edge of a desert, so remote area, an isolated area, you can't imagine, that it would look like this. Of course, went to schools, kindergartens, training centers, industries in this area, and not only Korla, but the whole of Xinjiang has become a major industrial and logistics hubs for the whole Belt and Road. Gaza could look like this in a few years if serious work is done to develop it. It can come out of its ruins and be rebuilt the way this area. Now, the Xinjiang province was also, as everybody knows, there are many unsubstantiated reports about genocide and ethnic cleansing here. I have never seen a genocide where the population grows in numbers and their living standards improve. This is a very strange kind of genocide. Actually, the people in Xinjiang have never had a good and prosperous life as it is now. I may do other records on the cultural, language, religious freedom in Xinjiang, but in a separate video. Because I discovered very shocking things about how much the Chinese government is paying attention to preserving, reviving, and promoting the heritage of the Uyghurs, and also the other other minorities in this region. So we will come back to that in another recording. But so this is what we can see developing also in this whole region, because there are similar features. As I said, Xinjiang was actually suffered a lot of terrorism, and there were separatist groups, religious groups, extremist groups, Islamic jihadist groups who wanted to split Xinjiang from the rest of China. And the Chinese government managed to keep the security and stability in the region, but not by, as the United States and NATO did in Afghanistan, by bombing villages and funerals and weddings, but by developing the area, and with social development, with education of the population, they managed to get the situation stable. So the idea of peace and security through economic development is best exemplified by what the Chinese government has done in Xinjiang. And also now is doing the same, working in Afghanistan with the Taliban government, which is now in control there, Many nations are now back in Afghanistan working, but the Chinese are focused on developing the economy of Afghanistan, building infrastructure, developing the minerals, industries, agriculture, and so on. So they believe that this model could work in Afghanistan, can work in other parts of them. And my point here is that in West Asia, we have the similar situation with the wars, terrorism, and all kinds of destabilization, but also we have the similar features, like it's a desert, an arid area, there's lack of water, backward agriculture, and so on. So what is very fascinating about this region is, of course, and I have worked for many, many years on the question of economic development in this region, is that you have within this circle, not only you have a fantastic geographical location between three continents, Asia, Africa, and Europe, also between the Indian Ocean and the Mediterranean, you also have within this circle alone about 500 million people. They are projected to reach 1 billion by 2050. Where there's a rapid population growth. But also you have part of this population are young. Most of the population is young and have relatively good education. So industrial development is quite possible in this region. You also have in this region almost 2/3 of the oil and natural gas reserves of the world that are discovered so far. And in addition, you have enormous financial resources. The sovereign wealth funds of the Gulf Cooperation Council, for example, have around 4 trillion US dollars in foreign currency reserves. Traditionally, most of that money was invested in financial and banking institutions in the West, in Europe, Britain, the United States, but also in real estate projects all over the world, but also mostly in Europe and in the United States. Now we have had a development of real estate in Dubai and Qatar and all these countries, but this is not real economic development. So these resources can be pooled together to, for example, we propose as part of the Oasis plan to establish an Arab infrastructure development bank, or a West Asia infrastructure development bank. So it's not only the Arab countries, you can include Iran, Turkey, Ethiopia in it. So the capitalization of this bank could be $100 billion to start with, using the revenues from the oil and gas. But what this enables is not only the rebuilding of Gaza and the region, but also it will make possible for the poorer nations in the region, like Palestine, Jordan, Lebanon, also Libya, Sudan, to establish their national development bank and borrow, use bonds from these banks to capitalize their national banks too. So this is quite possible. One important thing to remember that the last year, several nations within this circle joined the BRICS group, the Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. These countries are Iran, the United Arab Emirates, Egypt, and Ethiopia, which are included in this circle. Saudi Arabia was on the verge, it was invited, but due to its sensitive relationship to the United States, has not made up its mind. But Saudi Arabia is actively working with China, with the Belt and Road, for investments in infrastructure, industry, both in Saudi Arabia, in China, but also in other parts of the region and in Africa. So there is very much hope. So part of this is our design for the reconstruction of this region would include also extending the Belt and Road to this region. We have the confluence of both the economic belt of the Silk Road, which is the land-based corridor, and the maritime Silk Road crosses this area and is connected to many of the ports in the whole region. The development of the Oasis plan, the development of the Palestinian areas have to be seen in this larger context of the Belt and Road. And it is quite possible today that we can manage this. As I said, the Egyptian government will bring together all the Arab leaders and present a plan for the reconstruction of Gaza. We are presenting our idea, the Oasis plan for the reconstruction of Gaza and the whole region, and actually some of the Arabic press is publishing this just right before the summit held. Recently, the Oasis plan, I wrote an article in Arabic, which was published actually in Jerusalem by the Palestinian newspaper in Jerusalem. So this idea is spreading in the region because the Egyptian government have not showed any details of its own plan, but we try to contribute with whatever we have to this discussion. The ironic part of the reconstruction of Gaza in the context of what I explained about Xinjiang and the similarities between what was going on in Xinjiang and the region now. Part of our plan, of course, is that the population of Gaza will not be deported while the reconstruction is taking place. It will take time, but the population can stay there. They can be housed in mobile, prefabricated housing units connected to sanitation systems, bathrooms and showers and so on and so forth along the coast, and connected both with water desalination plants. These were floating power desalination plants in the sea, and also power generating plants also floating. They are such type of ships. They are a whole plant which is mounted on a ship using natural gas and other source of fuel so the population of Gaza can stay in Gaza while the reconstruction is taking place. As I said, there's one very important irony people have to think about it, is that the question of the tunnels which were dug by Hamas and used in the war, this was in time of war, but in time of peace, I would suggest to build a subway system, a modern subway system in Gaza, along the length of Gaza, which is about 42 kilometers, and also it's 5-6 kilometers wide, the whole Gaza, and the widest part of Gaza, it is only it's 12 kilometers. What came to my mind is that last year when I was in Xinjiang, in Urumqi, the capital of Xinjiang, I took the subway system there. It's a one-line system, and when I looked at this again, it's very, very similar to what I think could be built in Gaza. It's a 32-kilometer long subway line, as I said, and it serves the whole city. This subway can be also used not only for transport of people, but also for transport of goods, transport of power, water, and all other kinds of logistics can be used. So this is the ironic side of this situation, in that this is actually quite possible and could be a gift from the Chinese people or the people of Xinjiang to the Palestinian people. Because you need to rebuild Gaza from the ground up. And when you have already built housing and all kinds of overstructures, it would be very difficult to go back and dig underneath the already built area. So it has to be from the ground up, underground up, with the whole reconstruction of Gaza. So this is something that should be considered actually when rebuilding. I hope that you will help us spread this and make sure that all people can see that there is this alternative plan to President Trump's absurd idea, but also that we can actually achieve peace not only between the Palestinians and Israelis, but we can achieve peace in the whole region and even in the world based on this idea of peace through economic development. So thank you for joining us this time again, and hope to see you soon.